What are your thoughts about women breastfeeding openly in restaurants?
Feeding, sure, no problem. Changing diapers on the table booth's chair, no fucking way. There's a reason most bathrooms have a change table. Thanks for the clarification. I've been pooping in the wrong place this whole time. So embarrassing. I drunk sharted at the Applebee's happy hour once. Not my lowest point, but I'll be damned if I ever let anyone but Reddit know. Wait. Tell me about your lowest point. I think mine was at the Del Mar Fair on 4th of July, and I had too many margaritas, and I vomited everywhere the second the fireworks started, so no one saw. Hopefully that helps you share. Edit. To not to. This. So much this. My kids are out of diapers, but it still irritates me when I go into a men's bathroom with no changing table. As a woman going into a bathroom, I've seen fathers bring their daughters in. I'd much rather that than have to listen to the awkward conversation that daddy can't go in there, but I'm scared to go alone. At what point does your child's fear mean less than a stranger's momentary "oh, she's gotta pee" thought process? I wish that were true. But as a dude, most restaurants I've been to with my kids don't have anything in the men's washroom. It's bullshit. I changed a shitty diaper on the floor right in front of the customer service desk at Target one afternoon. They bitched about it and I told them to get a fucking changing table in the men's room and I'd use it. 2 weeks later, there was a changing table in the men's room. The girl is 17 now and seems unscathed. The mall I used to work at had a separate parents' room not part of the ladies' toilet. But there was always some Karen who thought it meant mother's room. There was one cleaner fired for trying to peek at boobs under the guise of cleaning, even though protocol was only female cleaners would service those rooms. But that's why they had curtains, cubicles, or even separate rooms for breastfeeding with privacy. Why Karens thought they could tell a father he wasn't able to change his baby is beyond me. The best one was the guy following them to the food court and changing on the table next to them. I think we can make an exception for that case. I think 17 years ago, even McDonald's, which was my reliable destination for having changing tables in both bathrooms, likely did not. The only time I've seen this was one place that had single occupancy washrooms, so I used the change table in the women's washroom. When I was a baby, my dad would just take me into the women's restroom every time. If somebody complained, he'd just ask if they wanted to change me instead, lol. If somebody complained, he'd just ask if they wanted to change me instead, lol. That's brilliant. If I walked into a woman's restroom and found a dad changing his kid on the change table, I would immediately put 2 and 2 together and not give a fuck. Wish there were more people like you. I can't even take my kids to the park without side-eye. Imagine if they found me in the women's bathroom with a half-naked baby. Probably the hardest part of being a single dad for me. This should never be a big deal considering women's restrooms have stalls, so dads changing their kids is bothering nobody. This. I don't even have kids, but I have never in my entire life questioned a man in the women's room if he has a small child with him. Even if you're bringing your 6-year-old daughter in to pee, I'm not questioning it. I don't know if I've seen a woman with their son in the male restroom, but I've definitely seen plenty of men bring their daughters into the men's room. Didn't bother me one bit though. Kids gotta go too. Usually when I see a woman in the men's room, it's either because there's a line for the women's room or they're looking for their son. I used the men's room at Waffle House after way too many nights out. Women take forever and they're nasty AF in public restrooms. I was in and out of the men's room in no time at all. I can still remember the look on my now husband's face the first time he saw me walk out of the men's room, lol. Yeah, I take my son and daughter into the ladies' room. I think it's rude to walk into the men's room because the dudes have their dicks out, But in the ladies' room everyone has a private stall. My dad, very abusive, but that's a whole side story, used to bring me into the men's restroom until I was around 7 or 8. That was way too old. It just made everyone uncomfortable. Exactly. The one time I did this was when a restaurant didn't have one in the men's room and told me I couldn't use the women's room. So, I found the closest, cleanest flat surface I could find. I hear they have a changing table in the men's room now. I like to think I helped. Where are these magical bathrooms you speak of? Because I've definitely had to speed change my son on the men's bathroom sink, because there wasn't a changing station in the men's bathroom, and I didn't want someone's first sight walking into the bathroom to be my son's tiny nades flashing them. Ha ha ha, I was gonna say the same. My 2-month-old loves to continue yelling for the first minute of breastfeeding. My son used to do the same. The thing is, his twin would get right to feeding and would stimulate the letdown on his boob too, so it would be 20 seconds of screaming and 30 seconds of vague drowning noises before he clicked that food was happening. Bravo for tandem feeding. It's a legit circus, and you are the master blaster ringmaster for having the power to blast their faces into submission. https people.com Human interest breastfeeding mom challenges critics icy stare by staring right back. For some reason I thought this was a reference to larger-chested women just hanging their tits on the table. Lol, 100% this is now what I'll be referring to my boobs as I'm literally cackling already. Last week I was at a cafe terrace and I saw a woman breastfeeding her baby and afterwards changing the diaper on the table, which was a tad odd since they have a nice changing room there. After she left I noticed she left the dirty diaper on her plate, didn't even bother to close it up. Unsurprisingly, that's a health code violation, at least around here. Surprisingly, a violation is charged against the restaurant, not the dirty motherfucker that did it. It just happened here, before COVID. Someone changed their kid at a dining table. A disgusted patron noticed it, and called it in. Health department fined the restaurant. I hope they fought it. A few years ago some lady changed her kid on one of the leather couches my dad had in his restaurant for customers waiting for a table. Stained the couch. I still remember the look of offense on her face when I told her to please use the changing table we have in the restroom. She told me it wasn't sanitary. Greater than. Pretty sure leaking shit all over a couch isn't sanitary. Also, I'm betting they cleaned the bathroom more often than the waiting room. Sanitizing the waiting room isn't usually on a checklist for most restaurants. The changing of the diaper at the table is disgusting and appalling. I would call out any woman or man who did that. The baby's gotta eat. Plus I don't even pay enough attention to other people to even notice or give a shit either way. I agree lol. I've noticed moms breastfeeding their babies at a restaurant maybe a grand total of 2 times in my whole life, and I go out to eat all the time. However, I always notice when a baby is screeching so loud nobody can enjoy their meal. I don't even mean just crying, I mean that screech they do sometimes where if you're anywhere close to them you can't even continue talking, you just have to stop and wait for the kid to finish. I promise I don't hate kids lol, this is just my opinion. I don't see how it would fucking bother anyone. We have a saying in my language. Look at your own plate. Not sure if there is similar saying in English. Basically it's used if someone is commenting how what others are eating. I had never heard this until a couple years ago and LeVar Ball in an interview said that to someone. That was a riot. I don't know if this will be considered the official English alternate to that saying, but mind your own fucking business is sorta semi-popular. I came here to say this pretty much. It's so simple yet so many people struggle with this concept. Unless somebody is actually affecting you or your family, Just leave other people alone and let them do their own thing. When I hear a baby hungry crying in a restaurant, my first though is generally, doesn't anyone have a boob for that baby? My boob's first thought is somebody needs me. Boobs to the rescue. I haven't nursed in 2 years, and yes, my doctor is aware I'm just an overachiever, and the only way she has to stop it, hormonal birth control, isn't an option for me. I am so sick of having a letdown every time a kid cries. If it helps, you could put your boobs overzealousness to good use by donating your breast milk to pediatric hospitals. At least then the letdowns wouldn't be so annoying. I'm on drugs now that mean they do not want my milk. We actually cancelled plans to start this particular drug when I found out I was pregnant, and I like breathing, so I'm not stopping the drugs. Also, breast milk is a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you take out, the more your body makes. I'm trying to stop lactating here, not make more. I hate when people say, can't you feed your baby in the toilet? Like, sure, why don't you take your nice panini and latte right off into the loo? Agreed. My wife fed all of our kids in public areas, but kind of off to the side and in the corner to avoid drama in our southern state in the USA. Even then she would have dried up old Karens wagging their finger saying shame on you. I was nursing once in a southern USA airport, and I was so stressed about traveling with a baby and finding ways to nurse without getting looks. Anyway, there was this grandfather and granddaughter sitting right near me in the terminal, and I tried to be discreet, but I could see he was pointing at me to his granddaughter. I got a little worried, but he smiled very widely and said something along the lines of, I am showing my granddaughter how you are feeding your baby. Where I come from, this is a very important job for mother and we have great respect. I want her to understand. And, wow, did I almost cry. Breastfeeding is probably the hardest, most grueling thing I've willed myself to do, and I'm a long-distance runner, former backcountry camp counselor, and I somehow finished a dissertation and got a PhD. The point is, I know how to inflict suffering on myself. Breastfeeding was harder than all of that, though also so rewarding. That grandfather was the only person who ever told me, in public, that I was doing a great job. He openly recognized the importance of the task. I felt connected to all the women who came before me and the women who will follow. It was incredibly moving. No matter how you feed your baby, it's daunting to care for an infant in public. Kindness goes a long way. But not only that, tell a mother she's important. Tell her she's respected and valued. You can't fathom how much it would mean to her and how much stress, fear, anxiety she is likely managing beneath the surface so as not to upset her child. Love your comment, and the experience would have been important for the little girl as well. Seeing breastfeeding normalized, especially by adult men, will help her if she chooses to have kids and breastfeed in future. I am naturally pretty modest, but I've breastfed all 3 of my kids. And I do it in public. But because I'm shy, I will go off somewhere less public if possible. The few times any rude people tried to say anything to me though, I went off. Once I was breastfeeding in my car, and a lady asked me if I could go down the street. Like, WTF no. My baby is hungry now. I have no hesitation to bitch out anyone who has anything negative to say about breastfeeding. Military mom here. When my kid was a baby, I had to take him on base to get his health insurance instated. So I sat in a waiting room next to these seasoned army guys who had served time in Iraq and Afghanistan. When I started nursing, no one batted an eye. For a mom's first time nursing in public, it could have gone way worse. The only times I got dirty looks, snotty comments were one, a children's photography studio of all places told me to go nurse in the bathroom. I refused. 2. Lots of uncomfortable stares on the monorail at Disney. My 2-month-old was screaming and the boob shut him up. I thought it was funny. I'm a very discreet nurser. They'd rather listen to him scream? Well, fuck off. I've nursed babies everywhere. That's crazy about the photo studio. Don't they usually encourage moms to nurse for newborn photos so the baby is sleepy? The only thing I think that makes it uncomfortable is the fact that once you've noticed it happening, you start having to avoid absent-mindedly staring in that direction until it's finished because you don't want to look like you're staring at them. But that's a me problem, not one for the actual mother and child. If the baby has to eat, the baby has to eat. But that's a me problem, not one for the actual mother and child. Respect for having the self-awareness to admit it. I grew up on a farm, so for me it's about as exciting as watching any animal, which, since I'm not an utter degenerate, isn't very. I'd rather a happy baby having a meal than a hungry miserable baby screaming and crying for nourishment. I am, however, against the restaurant charging an opening fee. Edit. Thanks for the generous gift of my first gold to whoever gave it to me. Edit 2. Thanks also for all of the other awards. They're lovely. This. I would time eating in restaurants with my baby's nursing time, because they're the most quiet. I would eat one-handed, but that's what partners are for. Cutting up steak, nothing else. The last part. I cut up so many meals while my wife was breastfeeding. Find myself doing it by accident sometimes, and now we both prefer our bite-sized beans on toast. I get what they were trying to convey, but the literal use of their language is hilarious and implies golf ball-sized beans or larger. That makes so much sense. Why would someone get married, or even date, if not for them cutting each other's steaks? My husband used to do that for me while I was on chemo. My hands were too weak at the time. I also didn't wear a wig, because I found them hot and uncomfortable. I'm glad to say no one ever remarked on my baldy head or the fact that my husband was cutting up my dinner for me. No one should be remarking on a breastfeeding mother either. There is a simple 2-part test to determine if remarking towards some kind of behavior is warranted for. Are they affecting someone negatively? Are they affecting themselves negatively? If the answer to both is no, then remarks towards the behavior are unwarranted. The flip-flops on the table could be detrimental to their health, so asking them if they're sure they want to have their flip-flops near their food is fair. For anyone who faces this, I bought an inexpensive skull cap thing sold to black men to wear under the wig. It made it less uncomfortable. But bald is good too, except it does make Bezos look like a penis. Ha ha ha. Yes, it does. Good idea about the skull cap though. I never minded being bald at all. It was the 80s and we were all wearing huge earrings, so it was actually very convenient. I didn't always feel well enough to be jumping into the shower, so not having a mop of hair to wash and style was a great relief. Plus, with my lively personality, I like being unique. I would never have done it purely as a fashion statement, but I did enjoy the look at the time. Also, immediately after nursing, they're full of milk and are milk drunk and can be set in their caraway stroller other adults' arms, and you can finish up your meal in peace. Haha. No, it's a joke. Most restaurants, in Pennsylvania anyway, that don't serve alcohol will allow you to bring in your own wine. They do, however, charge you an uncorking fee. Nip tip sounds like a genre of pizza delivery porn. Here's the money for the pizza. Oh no, I don't have any money for a tip. Maybe I can tip you in another way? No, I don't think I've ever noticed anyone breastfeeding. I'm sure I've seen it happen while I was out, but I've never noticed. I think that says something about the people who do make a big deal out of it. I know I somewhat recently saw a woman doing it. Somewhere. Maybe a restaurant? I know it was a public place. Clearly it has left a traumatic long-lasting memory. I've seen it happen and it's like, oh? A boob. Oh okay, she's breastfeeding, and then it literally is the easiest thing not to care or stare. Last month, baby strapped to chest in wrap-type carrier, boob out, baby feeding, talking to gate agent at airport. I thought it was impressive and funny and went back to my life, because it was a baby eating. Plus side, same flight as me, kid presumably conked out post-feeding. Never heard a peep out of him. Nice flight. Edit, I somehow blacked out that time I was in car sales, came back after running credit checks and the woman had her boob out and baby was nursing away. I just kept a straight face and discussed credit scores and the car deal. Baby was nursing most of the time and she did majority negotiations. Left and one of my co-workers was like, "Is she breastfeeding?" So and so said nah, but I said she wasn't. Neither of us can go look to prove it because I can't go stare at her boobs. Was like, yup. The two guys didn't care beyond proving they were right. Finance came out laughing. She had a son and was like, that lady is a fucking boss. Tits out signing contracts. I wish I'd done that when son was little. She was impressed af. So often it just looks like they're holding the baby. You usually can't see anything. There were a couple times random people struck up conversations with me while I was nursing in public, and I could tell they had absolutely no idea. I never kink shame, but it's an unwritten rule to not include non-consenting parties in your fetish times. I try not to think about other people's business. Especially shit that doesn't affect me in any way. That's a good philosophy to have. Half the problems we face would be eliminated if most people thought like you. As a woman, I think women should be able to feed their baby wherever. As a matter of personal preference though, I always cover up. I have had so many creeps stare at me that I don't like to openly do it. Yes. I'm more comfortable keeping the girls discreet, but any nursing mom should be able to openly feed her baby. I have breastfed in public before, and would continue to do so if I had children who were nursing. I always used the two-shirt method to keep myself as covered as possible, which was for my comfort as my breast was much larger than my baby's head. I used one of those super light blankets that are almost like cheesecloth for the same reason. My breasts were literally the size of my head. I tested it with a hat. I love that someone other than me tested this with a hat. I also prefer to do the two-shirt method or a cover for my own comfort, though anyone staring or commenting or trying to stop a mom from nursing can go place it and spin on a cactus. Yeah, I'm kind of a scrawny person, so I looked like a stick figure with 36H boobs. My first would only every nurse on one side before they passed out. It took me almost a year to lose the baby weight. Second, he would nurse me dry on both sides. I was down to pre-pregnancy weight in 3 months and lost another 20 by the time he was 5 months. I'm pretty tall, so when I hit 115 pounds I started mainlining Costco chocolate chunk cookies and drinking it sure. Yeah, my kid's mouth couldn't cover my entire areola, forget his head blocking the majority of an engorged mammary. I tried those blankets and he refused. Luckily, nursing in public was infrequent for us and usually ended up happening at the zoo of all places. I've always preferred wearing undershirts, so this is what I do too. 99% of the time people don't notice and don't care. I prefer nursing in private like my car, cause I love the bonding undisturbed. But I will nurse in public if that's the easiest option. It's pretty much the same as any customer. Don't disturb the other guests and you are fine. So drink up, little human. At least you are silent. Just to add to this, in America, Public breastfeeding is protected by federal law and state law, in all the states. In so many comment sections, I always come across the argument that the federal law only protects breastfeeding in public so women can't breastfeed in restaurants or stores, because they're private property. The law must only apply to municipal parks and government buildings. I tell them to look at the text of the law, because it doesn't say public, it says anywhere the mother is otherwise permitted to be, like a publicly accessible yet privately owned store. Idiots. I'd rather the baby be fed and quiet. Also, it's none of my business what other patrons are doing unless they're being obnoxious assholes. Yeah, people are always weird about it, which is understandable. I work for a breastfeeding mom and have worked for both during my time as a nanny. You can look. It's natural for people to look at things they're not used to. It's the men and women that stare. And believe me, creepy old ladies love to stare at nursing moms. An old lady I had not even said hello to came up while I was breastfeeding and stroked my newborn's head. I was so flabbergasted. Lol. There's nothing creepier around a baby than an old lady. They are the only people I have trouble with when I take my nanny kids out. From pulling a pacifier out of their mouth, to try to kiss them, to watching as I change their diaper. I breastfeed my 12-week-old daughter. My rule of thumb is, I think it's okay to breastfeed anywhere where it's appropriate to have a milkshake. Restaurant is fine, bathroom is gross. Chewing with your mouth open is way more offensive than breastfeeding in public, yet way more people are okay with that.